During Tuesday's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, Trump said that Harris wants to, quote, do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. Now, Time magazine rushed to fact-check this claim, and they issued an embarrassing correction on Wednesday, likely due to this clip.
I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need.
Here to discuss is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Chris Bedford, senior editor for politics and Washington correspondent for Blaze Media. So, Chris, I mean, this is kind of embarrassing, but how did Time magazine actually go out there and try to defend Kamala Harris?
Well, they live in a total bubble. One where their viewpoints are unchallenged, one where they're just quick to dismiss these sorts of things, and one where, because of that, they're often not used to actually having to check their facts, not used to actually having to push back and say, look back and say, where could I be wrong here? Where could I be being led astray? In the business that all three of us are in, we're very used to this, where you have to double check. You can't just go off of some blog. You can't just go from your hip. You have to actually be able to verify and show, because a lot of folks are going to try and dismiss you and say, well, I didn't read that in Time magazine. By the way, how many times has Time magazine gone bankrupt? That's an interesting question. It used to be like a serious magazine, but now it seems to be something you occasionally see at airports and that puts out stories like this. But there's just there's so many assumptions. There's so many different things. And I'm writing right now for the Beltway Brief, for example, about how if you Google Haitians cats, all you get is article after article after article of people saying, this is an unproven myth, because they're going off of a town manager's point of view who's not answering his phone anymore and really has a vested interest in not talking about this. All of these things are written by reporters who just take one government official's word over another one, mind you, have never been to this town and aren't thinking very deeply about these issues. And that sort of arrogance does occasionally lead them astray.
Well, that's unfortunate because they don't even see Matthew Peterson's great cat memes that he's created.
I didn't create any memes. That was the AI. It accidentally happened. I think this is significant right now because the fact check regime has been one that we've all lived under for a long time. And listening to what you're saying and looking around the room, of this country in the last week, I feel like that regime is significantly weakened. This is still what they all do, but it's become routine. And you can sort of sense with the glee about the cat memes and, what's going on in Ohio, that they've almost been caught in a trap. It's almost as if, some people say, well, you should never put out these memes because you don't actually know if a cat was eaten or whatever. And on the other end of it, it's like, look what's behind door number one. You came here to tell me that, I don't know who's saying it, but no cats have been eaten, right? And then the entire right's going, oh, look at this, a city with 20,000 migrants and all these problems, right? So it almost feels like the right has learned how to weaponize this, maybe in a positive way, but am I overreaching?
Excuse me. I don't think so at all. It's like you've been reading my mind because it's been what I've been writing about right now. What an incredible bet it is for corporate media to make that a migrant community from literally the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, a place where every aid project ever tried has gone to fail and die, a place where, according to a 2010 New York Times article, between 50 and 95% of the population practices either full-blown voodoo or just mixes it into their diet. That our credibility as media reporters is staked on the fact that no one from that population, which doesn't really have hunting licenses and doesn't really have agriculture and doesn't really have a lot of the things that we take for granted, no one's actually eating people's pets. No one's actually eating the birds. I mean, I was talking to Julio Rosas today, our reporter who's there, and he's been there all week, and he'll be back there next week. And some of the way that the city council and the city officials are responding really reminded me of where I lived in Washington, D.C. for years. As I was moving my family out of town, because it become incredibly unsafe. Well, every single member of the officer class of our Knights of Columbus chapter who was around the same age was doing the same thing and leaving our parish and moving because of the danger. Our elected officials were telling us there is no crime spree. What are you talking about? None of this is happening. Now, the job of a reporter is actually to go beyond that and to maybe check it out and maybe ask some questions and talk to some locals and some people who may have a differing point of view. But instead, you see J.D. Vance, the vice presidential candidate up there, and the senator from Ohio, talking about how he's been receiving phone calls about this. But even if this is just some kind of meme, we need to talk about 20,000 migrants from this culture, voodoo migrants from a culture and the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere moving into Springfield, Ohio, and how it's actually changed things and the problems it's caused for residents. And Caitlin Collins was repeating like it was some kind, like a child with her hands in her ears. The city manager said this didn't happen. The city manager said it didn't happen. Again, the city, it was a life raft to cling to. And that's just not a very steady life raft when you're dealing with Haitians.
Well,
it's absolutely ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous that this did not happen. This never happened. Who said it happened? A bunch of residents said it happened. It didn't happen because the city manager will declare. Exactly. 20,000 Haitian migrants. And you think that something like this didn't happen? That's nuts. That just doesn't make any logical sense.
Don't believe your lion eyes.
It's all to hide the obvious truth. They're not going to hide it, right? They're caught in a trap. It's sticky. And now every fact check is going to lead people to go, what's going on in Springfield, Ohio? What's going on there? And we're going to publish more articles about it, showing people the truth beyond who cares about the ducks and the geese at a certain point, right? We care about what's actually going on in people's lives there. And then every day it's in the news, it's making people remember, like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure that 50 people couldn't fit for some reason on Martha's Vineyard, which accommodates 200,000 people a year, right? Every summer. They couldn't accommodate 50 migrants.
Not even for 48 hours.
Not for, yes.
They were gone so fast.
Less than 48 hours, National Guard. See ya, we were enriched.
Got a lot of cats and dogs need to protect.
They did.
Absolutely.
They did.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, this was a big part of the debate, right? This was on the debate stage. Donald Trump said that. But we get today the news that Donald Trump, he put out on True Social that he doesn't want to have another debate. He said that Kamala was a no-show at the Fox debate. She refused to do NBC and CBS. So Kamala, in all caps, by the way, Kamala should focus on what she should have been doing almost the last 4-year period. There will be no third debate. So, Chris, is this a good move for Donald Trump? I mean, we did see the 3-against-1. That has been the narrative since the debate has ended. So is this what you would suggest for Donald Trump?
Well, I'm sitting here a little chastened because I began this week thinking that the House of Representatives had actually grown a pair and that Donald Trump was probably going to do really well in his debate against Kamala Harris, and it was smart to take that. And eventually, even when you're in this business of punditry where there are basically no consequences for being completely wrong, you have to have a little bit of reflection on this. But I am surprised because I think that this is something that Donald Trump ought to have taken. We know that when he's on his game, he is capable of being a master debater. I mean, someone who's actually someone who has changed the whole way that politics are discussed. Someone who's made so that normal political debates are honestly just completely boring. No one's going to want to watch them anymore. And he did get some decent poll results. There have been some bumps, as one poll said in Michigan, but largely Kamala Harris took more. I kind of think that maybe he just doesn't want to do the practice. Maybe he just doesn't want to do the work. I mean, the man is a 78-year-old billionaire. It's hard to tell any 78-year-old what to do. He's obviously got a little bit of stubbornness to him. And if he wants to insist that he won, then that's fine. And I don't think it's going to move the dial. Debates actually typically, rarely, except for his debate against Joe Biden, really move the dial that much in a meaningful way. But I was looking forward to a rematch.